At my first-year banquet, before all the civil and military officials, I threw my arms around the emperor's jade seal. Under everyone's stunned gaze, I rolled up my sleeves, revealing arms covered in dark bruises, and wailed at the emperor high above the throne. "Father, Mother is meeting the Grand Tutor in secret. She thinks I'm in her way and beats me every day. If you don't stop her, your daughter will be beaten to death." The whole hall fell dead silent. The emperor's face turned livid in an instant. The censer in the golden hall burned the finest dragonspit incense, thick and suffocating, like an invisible net draped over everyone. Today was my first-year banquet, the one-year-old catch ceremony for the 7th princess of the Great Qi dynasty. I was held by my wet nurse. Before us spread a huge red carpet, covered with all kinds of items: writing brushes, books, abacuses, small swords. Civil and military officials lined both sides, wearing formal smiles, yet their eyes held judgment and calculation. On the high platform sat my father, the son of heaven of Great Qi, a stern, suspicious man. Beside him was the empress, my legal mother, the executioner who had pushed me into the fire in my past life. She wore an extravagant phoenix robe today, her makeup perfect, a gentle smile on her lips, but the way she looked at me was like staring at a nuisance. I was dressed in elaborate palace robes, a carefully dressed doll on the outside, but inside beat the heart of a 20-year-old vengeful ghost. I had been reborn for a full year. I had lain low, endured, like a venomous snake waiting for its moment. In this year, hidden behind the face of a child, I had seen everyone's true colors. I had seen the shameful affair between the Empress and Grand Tutor Lu Qian, and I had once again felt the sting of her seemingly delicate hands slapping across my face. Every time she met Lu Qian in her chambers, annoyed by my crying, she would hand me over to the palace maids to deal with as they pleased. The finger marks pinching my arms layered one over another, old ones not yet faded, new ones already forming. These were my first great gift to her, to be unveiled under the bright sky today. The wet nurse set me down at the start of the carpet. "Princess, go on, pick what you like best," she urged me gently. Completely unaware of the storm her mistress was about to unleash, I stumbled to my feet, my small body unsteady. All eyes were fixed on me. My brother, the crown prince, hoped I would pick a book, proving the wisdom of the royal blood. The military officials hoped I would take a small sword, showing Great Qi's martial spirit. The empress hoped I would grab anything, just to end this tedious ceremony quickly, so she could go back to playing the virtuous wife. I could feel her impatient gaze burning into me. I walked step by step, slowly, my little head turning left and right, like a real baby curious about the world. I passed the writing brush said to have been used by a great Confucian scholar of the former dynasty. I passed the analects bound in gold thread. I passed the dagger inlaid with gemstones. My gaze skipped over all the carefully arranged items and fixed straight on the high platform. Next to the emperor's throne, on the table, rested the imperial jade seal, the symbol of supreme power. That was it. My heart pounded violently in my chest. The despair of my past life and the hatred of this life twisted together, almost bursting my tiny body. I had only one chance. I suddenly sped up, stumbled past the long carpet, and charged toward the platform. "Your Highness, Princess!" the wet nurse cried out in alarm. The palace servants tried to stop me, but the emperor waved them off. He seemed amused, curious to see what his one-year-old daughter intended to do. I successfully climbed the few steps, then threw myself at the jade seal with all my strength. A cold, hard touch spread from my palms, my small arms wrapped around it. I was holding the most reliable backing in the world. The entire hall went silent. The smiles on the officials' faces froze, replaced by unconcealed shock. Holding on to the imperial jade seal and refusing to let go, unheard of in the history of Great Qi. I could feel the emperor's gaze darken, sharp with scrutiny, curiosity, and the wariness of an emperor. The time had come. The emotions I had bottled up for a whole year erupted completely. "Wah!" I opened my mouth and wailed as loud as I could, my cry sharp and shrill, full of the most genuine grievance and fear of a small child. Large teardrops rolled down at once. Through my blurred, childish speech, I shouted the lines I had rehearsed countless times. "Father, father!" I lifted my head, teary-eyed, at the expressionless man on the dragon throne. Then, before everyone's eyes. I roughly rolled up my wide sleeves on my small, fair arms. Dark purple and blue pinch marks stood out horribly, exposed under the bright candlelight. A sharp gasp rose from the hall. The Emperor's pupils shrank sharply. I saw the Empress's dignified mask crack in that instant. Her fingers clenched her sleeves unconsciously. Now, with all my strength, I screamed those earth-shaking words at the Emperor high above. "Father, Mother is meeting the Grand Tutor in secret. She thinks I'm in her way and beats me every day. If you don't stop her, your daughter will be beaten to death." My voice was childish, but every word was clear, a clap of thunder exploding through the silent purple light hall. The whole hall was dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes moved from my bruised arms to the pale Empress, then to the equally frozen Grand Tutor Lu Qian. I clung tightly to the jade seal, crying so hard I could barely breathe. Yet through my tears, I stared unblinkingly at my father. His face darkened inch by inch. In those deep eyes brewed a storm that could destroy heaven and earth. In the end, his face turned to stone. "Guards!" His roar shattered the suffocating silence. Thud! The Empress fell to her knees, her face ashen, the pearls on her phoenix crown trembling. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, see reason. This concubine is wronged," she cried prettily, pitifully. "Nyanan is still young. She must have been instigated by villains to speak such nonsense, to slander this concubine and Grand Tutor Lu. Please investigate, Your Majesty." Grand Tutor Lu Qian also stepped forward at once and knelt, his face white as paper. "Your Majesty, what the princess said is completely false. This humble official and Her Majesty the Empress are pure and innocent, with no improper relations. Please see reason." Two executioners, acting in perfect unison, still putting on a show inside. I sneered. On the outside, I cried even harder. I let go of the jade seal, scrambled toward the Emperor's dragon boots, and clung tightly to his leg. "Father, scared. Mother wants to kill me. Father, save me." My cries pierced everyone's hearts, including the Emperor's pride. He looked down at me, his eyes complicated beyond words. There was anger, suspicion, but more than that, the offended dignity of an emperor. Family shame must not be aired in public. I was betting that he cared more about the royal reputation than an unloved princess, and I was betting on his suspicious heart. Once the seed of doubt was planted, it could never be pulled out. After a long while, his cold voice echoed through the hall. "Take the seventh princess to my chambers. Anyone who speaks of today's events will be beheaded." He did not say he believed me, nor did he say he did not, but those words, "take to my chambers," were my first victory. He bent down and lifted me up in his own arms. His embrace was not warm, filled with the domineering scent of dragonspit incense, but I knew, right now, this was the safest place in the entire palace. As he carried me up, passing over the Empress's head, I saw the look she shot me from her knees. It said, "Zhao Nyanan, you wait." I rested my head on his shoulder and answered calmly inside, "Wait, the show has only just begun too." The Emperor's chambers were called the Palace of Heavenly Purity, so empty I could hear my own heartbeat. Huge pillars held up the ceiling, carved with dragon patterns that seemed to come alive in the dim light. Coldly staring down at the intruder, he set me down on a soft couch covered in bright yellow silk, and dismissed all the servants. The enormous hall held only me and him, a 1-year-old child, and the ruler of an empire. The air hummed with invisible pressure. The Emperor did not sit down. He stood over me, staring down with those eyes that could see into people's souls, examining me inch by inch. I understood. Making a scene at the first-year catch was only the beginning. This was the real first test. I had to make him believe I was just a wronged, babbling child, not a scheming monster. I continued my act. I curled up in the corner of the couch, my small body trembling, big eyes filled with tears, looking at him timidly. Afraid to speak, I turned myself into a frightened little animal, fragile, helpless, dependent only on him. "Nyanan," he finally spoke, his voice deep, impossible to read. "Tell father, who taught you what to say today. Here it comes." An emperor's suspicion always comes before the truth. I flinched as if scared by his question, and tears fell again. Sniffling, I repeated my testimony in the simplest words I could. "Beat, mother, beat." I held out my bruised arm and waved it around. "Hurts, Nyanan, hurts." Grand Tutor, Mother. Angry, won't let Nyanan cry. My words were messy, illogical, but they strung together the key points perfectly. Empress, Grand Tutor, beating me. A child's accusation was far more shocking than an adult's testimony. The Emperor's eyebrows knitted tightly together. He stepped forward, knelt down, and took my arm. His fingers were rough and warm. He gently brushed over the ugly scars, his eyes growing deeper. He fell silent for so long that I almost thought my heart would stop. Summon the imperial physician. He finally gave the order. An elderly physician soon hurried over with his medicine chest, knelt on the ground, and dared not breathe loudly. Examine her wounds. The Emperor's tone was inarguable. The physician carefully lifted my arms and inspected them closely. His fingers were cold. When they touched my injuries, I flinched in pain, and tears fell even harder. Half the tears were acting, half were real pain. Your Majesty. The physician lowered my arms and kowtowed, his voice trembling. The princess's wounds were indeed caused by external beating or pinching. Furthermore, judging by the color and depth of the marks, there are both old and new injuries. They were not inflicted in a single day. That sentence was like a boulder dropped into the unfathomable lake of the Emperor's heart. He did not speak, but the air seemed to grow colder still. Just then, a eunuch's sharp voice came from outside the hall. Your Majesty, Her Majesty the Empress requests an audience. Disgust and impatience flashed across the Emperor's face. I will not see her. He spoke two cold words. Tell her to return to her palace at once. Without my order, she is not to step foot outside her gates. The weeping and pleading outside fell silent immediately. My heart finally settled a little. He believed me. Even if only 3 parts of him believed, that was enough. An emperor's trust never needed to be complete. 3 parts of suspicion were enough to destroy a person. The emperor dismissed the physician. Once again, only father and daughter remained in the sleeping hall. He lifted me back into his arms, his movements much gentler than before. Sleep, he said. I obediently closed my eyes, resting my small head on his broad chest, my breathing gradually steadying. Of course I did not sleep. I pricked up my ears, listening to his calm heartbeat, feeling every tiny movement from him. I heard him quietly call forth a shadowy figure, his closest confidant, leader of the Empire's most secret shadow guards. Investigate. His voice was low, but cut through with bone-chilling cold. Investigate the Empress and Grand Tutor Lu Qian. From the day they met, every interaction, every detail. Uncover everything for me. The shadow guard accepted the order and vanished without a trace. I knew the net I had cast was already closing. The Emperor held me on the soft couch for a long time. He thought I was asleep, yet his fingers unconsciously stroked the bruises on my arms. I did not know what he was thinking. Perhaps the anger of a deceived husband, perhaps the shame of a fooled emperor, or perhaps, what kind of chess piece I, this daughter who had suddenly entered his sight, truly was. After a long while, he gave a second order. By my order, tidy up the Palace of Eternal Joy. The 7th princess will move there. The Palace of Eternal Joy was a side hall attached to his own Palace of Heavenly Purity. Assign a team of imperial guards. No one is to visit without my permission. It was called protection. In truth, it was surveillance. I was being placed under invisible eyes, but I had also escaped the Empress's claws, gaining a chance to breathe and plan. Night fell. I was laid on a soft bed in the Palace of Eternal Joy. Maids carefully covered me with a silk quilt. I closed my eyes and savored the sense of safety. I knew that, at this moment, in the Empress's palace of earthly tranquility, that woman must be both shocked and furious. She would not wait for death. A fiercer counterattack would come soon, and I was already ready. 3. The Empress's counterattack came faster and more insidiously than I had imagined. On the 3rd day after I moved into the Palace of Eternal Joy, a familiar face appeared before me. It was Cui Huan, the head maid who had served my birth mother before she died and later, bought by the Empress with money and power, became one of the dogs who tormented me endlessly. She carried a bowl of bird's nest soup, her face covered in fake concern. Princess, it's time for your meal. Her Majesty the Empress specially ordered the kitchen to stew this for you. I looked at her, my heart ice-cold. In my past life, it was she who, on the Empress's orders, withheld my food, tampered with my medicine, and made my already weak body waste away day by day in this life. She had come again, sure enough, before I could react. The Emperor's shadow guards appeared in the hall like ghosts. They had clearly received word, coming to protect me. Cui Huan's face turned pale at the sight of them, but she forced composure. Immediately afterward, Wang Dequan, the Emperor's personal eunuch, entered, followed by several imperial guards. By His Majesty's order, summon maid Cui Huan for questioning. A prearranged interrogation unfolded before me. It took place in the main hall of the Palace of Eternal Joy. The Emperor did not come in person, but Wang Dequan represented his will. Cui Huan knelt on the ground, shaking like chaff. Cui Huan, Wang Dequan's voice was sharp and cold. This servant asks you, how did the seventh princess really get her wounds? I answer to. Steward Wang. Cui Huan's lips trembled. The princess was just naughty and fell while playing. It has nothing to do with Her Majesty the Empress. As expected, she firmly stuck to the script they had rehearsed. They were trying to pin all the blame on a 1-year-old child. How vicious, how ridiculous. I sat in my wet nurse's arms, watching her clumsy performance. At the right moment, I burst into tears again with a loud wah. Crying, I pointed a small finger at Cui Huan, my voice full of fear and anger. Bad person, you're bad, you and mother, beat me together, woo, bad person. My cries turned Cui Huan's face even paler. Wang Dequan looked at her coldly, as if staring at a dead man. Fell while playing. This servant holds the imperial physician's official record. It clearly states those wounds were caused by repeated pinching, not a simple fall. Cui Huan swayed. She had not expected the Emperor to be so thorough. Even preparing the physician's testimony, still, she gritted her teeth and refused to break. Betraying the Empress meant death. If she took the blame, her family might still benefit. I saw the resolve flash in her eyes. I knew I had to add more fuel. I stopped crying, tilting my head with the innocent naivety of a child. I spoke the death sentence I had prepared for her. Bracelet, mother's. My voice was soft, but loud enough for everyone in the hall to hear. Brother, Gambles, you took it. Cui Huan's eyes flew wide, all color drained from her face in an instant. The pure terror of a secret being exposed. I was speaking of something she had tearfully confessed before her execution in my past life. She had a hopelessly gambling brother who owed a huge debt. To pay it off, she had stolen a relic left to me by my dead birth mother, a fine white jade bracelet, which she pawned for money. No one but herself could have known this. Wang Dequan was sharp. He seized the key point at once. His fierce gaze fell on Cui Huan. What does the princess mean? No, I didn't. Cui Huan shook her head wildly, incoherent. The princess is talking nonsense. She's just a child. She knows nothing. Search. Wang Dequan gave the order without giving her a chance to defend herself. The imperial guard stepped forward immediately, ignoring Cui Huan's struggles. They roughly searched her quarters in less than the time it takes to burn an incense stick. The guards returned. In the lead captain's hand was a yellowed pawn ticket. The evidence was irrefutable. Wang Dequan slapped the pawn ticket against Cui Huan's face. What do you have to say for yourself now? Cui Huan stared at the ticket and collapsed completely. Her mental defenses shattered. This servant deserves death. This servant deserves death. She kowtowed madly, blood streaming down her forehead. It was the Empress. The Empress ordered this servant. She said if I gave false testimony, she would pay off my brother's gambling debts and give me a large sum of money. The princess's wounds, she told this servant to pinch them. She said if they looked real enough, Your Majesty would never suspect. She confessed everything. After listening, Wang Dequan waved a hand expressionlessly. Gag her, drag her out, beat her to death with sticks. Cui Huan's screams and pleas were choked off. They soon faded away outside the hall. I knew her fate was only the beginning. Soon, the Emperor's edict spread throughout the harem. The Empress had incited palace servants to frame the princess, exhibiting improper conduct. She was confined to the Palace of Earthly Tranquility for 1 month, stripped of 1 year's allowance, and ordered to reflect in solitude. The punishment was light, even a show of lifting high and lowering gently. I understood. The Emperor still had concerns over the Empress's powerful family, concerns over the stability of the court. To bring down this woman, The testimony of one maid was far from enough, but in this round, I had won using a trivial maid I had slapped the empress hard across the face. I had also let the entire harem see clearly. I, the seventh princess, was no longer a soft persimmon to be squeezed at will. More importantly, the scales in the emperor's heart had tilted another fraction toward me. That was enough. I lay in the palace of eternal joy, breathing in the sunshine-scented fresh bedding, my heart completely calm. The road of revenge was long, but I had all the patience in the world, for my days in the palace of eternal joy were the most peaceful I had known in 2 lifetimes. This was under the sun of heaven's own roof. Even the empress's long reach could not touch me here. I no longer had to live in constant fear that a slap would land on my face at any second. The emperor seemed to want to compensate me. Rewards poured in like water: food, clothes, furnishings, all of the finest quality, and I began the second step of my plan, to win the favor of the highest ruler in the empire. What I needed him to see was not just a wronged daughter in need of protection, but an extraordinary existence worthy of his affection and trust. I began subtly showing off my cleverness. The emperor often kept me by his side while handling state affairs. As he reviewed memorials, I sat quietly on the soft couch, playing with a 9-ring puzzle without crying or making a fuss. For a 1-year-old child to have such patience and focus was in itself extraordinary. Sometimes he tested the older princes on their studies. Once, the 4th prince recited a political essay and mispronounced a single character. Neither the tutor nor the emperor noticed at once, but I, beside them, called out the correct word in my childish, milky voice. All eyes turned to me. The emperor's eyes were filled with astonishment. He walked over, lifted me, pointed to the character in the book, and asked, "Nyanan knows this word?" I shook my head, pointed to my ear, then to the 4th prince. "Brother," said wrong, in the simplest way. I told him I had only heard the mistake. I did not truly read. Even so, it delighted him greatly. Good, good, worthy of being my daughter. He held me and laughed aloud. He had the 4th prince punished with a ruler, and let everyone see my astonishing talent for sound and language. From that day on, the emperor's gaze toward me held not just scrutiny and wariness, but genuine fondness and admiration. He began calling me his little prodigy. He even let me stay and play while he met with ministers. I knew I was stepping into his heart, step by step, but beneath peace danger always lurked. The empress was under house arrest, but she was no toothless tiger. I soon sensed something wrong. I started feeling sleepy all the time, lost my appetite, and sometimes my lower abdomen ached faintly. My 20-year-old soul inside immediately tensed up. In my past life, it was just such slow poisoning that ruined my body little by little, leaving me bedridden, and gave the empress her chance. In this life, she used the same trick again. All food from the imperial kitchen was tested with silver needles and checked repeatedly. There could be no problem there, so where was the flaw? I began watching everything I put into my mouth. Finally, in a dessert called almond cream, I caught an extremely faint bitter taste that did not belong to almonds or milk. Ordinary people would never notice it, but I had been chronically ill in my previous life. I knew a little about pharmacology, and the taste that once killed me was etched into my bones. It was chenji yin, a slow-acting poison. Small doses did not kill, but sapped energy, damaged organs, and over time, even immortals could not save the victim. It was colorless, tasteless, nearly undetectable. Ordinary silver needles could not find it. The empress's hand had reached my bowl again through some unknown path. Hatred boiled inside me, but my face remained calm. Expose her directly. I had no proof. The imperial kitchen was tangled with connections. Finding who tampered with the food would be nearly impossible. It would only warn her. I decided to turn her plan against her. I unknowingly ate half the bowl of almond cream. Then, when the emperor came to see me, I clutched my stomach and showed a pained expression. "Father, stomach hurts." My face was pale, fine cold sweat dotted my forehead, and I looked extremely weak. The emperor panicked and summoned the imperial physicians at once. Physicians took turns examining me, but found nothing. Their diagnosis was exactly as I had expected. "Your Majesty, the princess's pulse is weak, but there are no signs of poisoning. She is simply deficient in both qi and blood, likely due to natural frailty and the shock she suffered earlier." natural frailty, the same excuse as in my past life. The emperor frowned deeply, clearly dissatisfied. I lay on the bed, barely breathing, and tugged at his sleeve with all my strength. Father, I ate that sweet thing. Then my stomach hurt. I pointed to the half-bowl of almond cream on the table. It was sent from Mother's palace. I did not directly say the empress poisoned me. I only, as a child, linked stomachache to snacks from the empress. The rest I left to his suspicious mind to ferment. I saw his eyes turn razor-sharp instantly. He picked up the bowl, sniffed carefully, tested it with a silver needle. Naturally, nothing showed. But the way he looked at me was full of pity and rage. He did not need proof, he only needed doubt. Wang Dequan, he shouted sharply, investigate the imperial kitchen thoroughly, from the cook who made this almond cream to the eunuch who delivered it. Not one is to be spared. I knew this net might not catch the big fish. The empress's forces had run deep in the palace for years. Someone would surely take the blame for her, but this time, I had planted not just a seed of doubt in the emperor's heart. I had planted a poisonous thorn, one that would remind him every moment that his beloved daughter lived under the shadow of poisoning. It would make him restless, and it would deepen his murderous intent toward the empress. Day by day I closed my eyes, feeling the twisting pain in my stomach, yet a cold, unseen smile tugged at my lips. Empress, take your time, our game has only just begun. 5. The emperor's investigation into the imperial kitchen eventually went nowhere. An elderly cook could not endure torture, took all the blame, claimed he had accidentally mixed a cold-natured herb into the dessert, and died by slamming his head against a pillar. Dead. No testimony left. The empress escaped perfectly once again. She even sent precious supplements, asking after my health, playing the kind mother. I lay in bed, looking at the beautifully wrapped gifts, and saw everything clearly. I realized, relying only on the emperor's suspicion and anger was far from enough. He was the son of heaven. Weighing gains and losses was his instinct. As long as the empress's family held power in court, he would not depose her easily. I needed an ally, someone with status in the harem, with deep hatred, and brave enough to confront the empress directly. A figure appeared in my mind, Consort Li. She also came from a military family, but had been suppressed by the empress for 10 full years, even lost her newborn child in my past life. Not long after I died, she also wasted away and died, vanishing silently into the deep palace. Her hatred was a fire that could set the plains ablaze. All I needed was a spark to light it. I began pretending to be seriously ill. The after-effects of the slow poison gave me perfect cover. I listless all day, refusing food. The emperor was worried and allowed me to walk in the imperial garden on nice days to relax. This was the chance I had been waiting for. On a calm, sunny afternoon, I had my wet nurse carry me, and by coincidence we met Consort Li. Also walking in the garden, she wore plain palace robes, her face etched with endless sorrow, like a fading white chrysanthemum. When she saw me, she looked surprised, then knelt and curtsied. This concubine greets the 7th princess. I did not let her rise. I only tilted my head and looked at her with innocent eyes. Then I spoke, my voice soft, but each word cutting to the heart. Did the bad people hurt your baby too, like they hurt me? Consort Li's body stiffened violently, all color drained from her face. She stared at me in disbelief, her beautiful eyes filled with shock and pain. The death of her child had always been a palace taboo. No one dared mention it before her, and I, a 1-year-old child, had torn open her bloody scar in the cruelest way. Maids and wet nurses all knelt in terror. Not daring to breathe, I struggled down from my wet nurse's arms, walked to her, and took her cold hand. Then I rolled up my sleeve and showed her the purple bruises still fading on my arm. I hurt. I looked straight into her eyes and said, word by word, every day, it hurts. Consort Li's breathing quickened, her body trembled, in her lifeless eyes, a raging hatred ignited. She was not stupid. My accidental meeting and those senseless words had already told her too much. But she still dared not act. The empress's power was too great. She had fought for 10 years and lost for 10 years. She was already a frightened bird. She needed one final, decisive push. I stood on tiptoes, leaned close to her ear, and whispered in a voice only we could hear, the secret buried for years. The longevity lock in your baby's swaddling clothes. It wasn't pure gold, it was filled with lead. This was one of the old crimes the Empress confessed to the Emperor after being deposed in my past life. Begging to live, jealous that Consort Li had conceived a prince, she bribed artisans in the imperial household department to tamper with the longevity lock granted by the Emperor. Newborn skin was delicate. Wearing the lead-weighted lock for long poisoned the baby, who soon died. It had been done perfectly. No one but the Empress and me, the reborn one who heard the secret, could have known. Consort Li's body shook as if struck by lightning. She abruptly pushed me away, stepped back, and looked at me as if I were a ghost. In her eyes were pity, fear, shock, and finally, unshakable belief. She knew I was not talking nonsense. She understood. This seemingly innocent seventh princess, was her only hope for revenge. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. I only looked at her quietly, reached out my small hand, and tugged at her sleeve once more. This time, she did not push me away. She knelt down and held me tightly in her arms. Her embrace was warm, yet laced with the chill of despair. I rested my head on her shoulder, breathing in her faint orchid scent, and knew it in my heart. My league of vengeance. From today, it was officially formed. Working with someone as sharp as Consort Li was like befriending a tiger, but it also meant the least trouble. I did not need to say much. A common enemy, and a common hatred, that was our strongest bond. 6. The Empress's confinement soon ended. She emerged before everyone like a dormant venomous scorpion, still wearing that dignified, gentle, mother of the nation mask. But both Consort Li and I knew, beneath the calm lake, a storm was coming. She would never tolerate a thorn in her eye who had defied her authority and still lived. A greater plot was waiting for me. Before long, the opportunity came. The annual imperial prayers ceremony was to be held, begging blessings for the realm of Great Qi. While discussing the ceremony, the Empress volunteered a suggestion: let the clever and lovely seventh princess be the seal-bearing maiden for the ritual. She spoke earnestly, before the Emperor and all consorts. Your Majesty, Nyanan is divinely intelligent, a blessing sent to Great Qi by heaven. Let her hold the national jade seal and offer it to the gods. It will show our royal sincerity. Let the people see your love for the princess, display the bond between father and daughter, and ease all past misunderstandings. Her words were grand and flawless. The Emperor was delighted, taking it as a gesture of goodwill from the Empress to repair their relationship. He agreed on the spot. Only I and Consort Li, whom I had warned, felt a sharp alarm. The prayers ceremony was crowded and chaotic, the perfect occasion to create trouble and strike to kill. This honor of seal-bearing maiden was clearly a death sentence. Consort Li and I met in private. Her face was filled with worry. What can we do? This is obviously a trap. We can't let you go. No, I must go. I sat on her lap, my small face without a child's panic, eerily calm. This is a chance she handed to us. We can't waste it. But, no buts, I cut her off. You only need to do as I say, arrange your people to be in the right place at the right moment. I told her my plan, word by word. Shock flashed in Consort Li's eyes, then quickly turned to resolution. She knew we had no way back. The prayers ceremony arrived as scheduled. I wore a specially made, elaborate maiden's robe, surrounded by palace servants. Walking toward the high altar, the Emperor and all officials were already waiting. The Empress looked at me with a smile hiding bloodthirsty excitement. From a young eunuch, I took the heavy jade seal wrapped in yellow silk. From the moment I held it, I became the center of the entire ceremony. I had to walk alone up the long white jade steps, carry the seal to the altar, and place it in the Emperor's hands. The path was no more than 100 steps, but it was my bridge between life and death. I began to walk, steadily, my small face solemn and pious. Inside, I counted silently 10, 20, 30. At 50 steps, right in the middle of the stairs, chaos erupted from the crowd. A young eunuch in charge of order suddenly screamed like a madman, breaking through the imperial guards, his eyes bloodshot, face ferocious. He held a glittering dagger and charged straight at me. Assassin, protect the princess. The hall erupted in screams. The guards were caught off guard, frozen for a moment. Everyone watched as the assassin rushed closer and closer. Like a mad bull I stood still, as if scared stupid on my face, the extreme terror of a small child in my heart. cold as ice now. The instant before the dagger touched me, I did something no one expected. I slipped. My body tilted, and the jade seal I held smashed straight down toward the assassin. A heavy thud, the solid seal crashed into his ankle. The eunuch screamed. His charge stopped abruptly. He lost balance and crashed to the ground in the blink of an eye. "Protect the princess," a guard roared. Lunging from the side like a tiger, he kicked the dagger away, then shielded me with his body. This guard was Consort Lee's trusted man, placed long in advance. His timing was perfectly coincidental. Immediately, the guards swarmed and pinned the assassin down. Before anyone could breathe easy, black blood oozed from the assassin's mouth. His head tilted. He was dead on the spot. Poison. Suicide. No evidence left. Everything happened too fast. From the charge to the death, only a few breaths. The scene was a mess, then fell into dead silence. I collapsed on the ground, gasping, pale as paper, utterly terrified. The emperor snapped out of his shock, rushed down the altar, and pulled me into his arms. "Nyanan, Nyanan, are you all right?" His voice trembled with fear. I clung to his shoulder, shaking all over, unable to speak, but my gaze, over his shoulder, stared coldly at the empress not far away. She too looked shaken, but deep in her eyes, the unmasked shock and disappointment. I saw them clearly. The emperor followed my gaze to the empress. His eyes were no longer just suspicious, no longer just angry. They were icy, murderous, undisguised. He knew, if I hadn't cleverly tripped the assassin with the seal, if that guard hadn't just arrived, his beloved princess would have died before all officials. The imperial jade seal would have been stained. The royal dignity would have been completely shattered. He could not bear that consequence. And who else could have planned this but the empress, who hated me to the bone? "Take the empress back to the palace of earthly tranquility." His voice was as cold as if dragged from an ice cellar. "Place her under strict guard. No one is to visit without my order." This time, it was not mere house arrest. It was imprisonment. One word difference, a world apart. I knew, from this moment on, in the emperor's heart, the empress was already dead. She was only waiting for a dignified way to die. 7. The assassination at the prayers ceremony fell like a boulder into the harem, stirring huge waves. The emperor flew into a rage and ordered a full investigation. Though the assassin died on the spot, all fingers pointed silently at the empress's palace. From then on, I was truly sheltered under the emperor's wing. My residence, the palace of eternal joy, was placed under the highest security layers of the emperor's most trusted guards. Every meal, every detail of my life was overseen personally by Wang Dequan. No one dared tamper with anything again. The emperor began investigating and weakening the empress's family with unprecedented force. Under the surface of court, currents raged. I knew I must not only survive, but take the initiative, hand the emperor his sharpest blade. I began using the trust he had in me, speaking like a child, to influence affairs of state. One day, the emperor reviewed memorials in the imperial study while I played nearby. He frowned at one about water conservancy in the south. I crept over, glanced at it accidentally, then pointed to a spot on the map in my milky voice. "Father, here, lots and lots of rain, houses will wash away." I pointed to the Qinghe Dam in the Jianghuai region. In my past life, the next summer, it would burst after days of heavy rain, flooding thousands of acres, leaving tens of thousands homeless. A catastrophe. The official in charge was a key member of the empress's clan. He had embezzled repair funds, leaving the dam useless. The emperor later beheaded him, and the empress's faction suffered a heavy blow in this life. I would make it happen early. The emperor looked at where I pointed, his eyes narrowing. "Why do you say that, Nyanan?" I shook my head. "Innocent, I don't know, I just feel, this place will cry," very loudly. A child's intuition was sometimes more convincing than mountains of evidence, especially after I had already shown myself a little prodigy. The emperor pondered for a long while, said nothing more, but I knew he had taken my words to heart. He immediately summoned his trusted ministers, sent a reliable team of investigators in plain clothes to Qinghe to check the dam secretly. Half a month later, an urgent report arrived from Jianghuai. The Qinghe Dam indeed had fatal flaws. Many key sections were hollowed out, the shoddy work shocking to see. If not discovered in time, once the flood season came, The consequences would have been unimaginable. The emperor's face turned livid when he read the report. When he looked at me, his eyes held shock, joy, even awe. He began to believe this daughter of his might truly be a blessing from heaven, able to receive divine revelations. His reliance and love for me reached a height never seen before. The Qinghe Dam corruption case dragged down a huge wave of officials, almost all the empress's maternal clan and their allies. The emperor used this chance to launch a massive purge, severely weakening the foreign relatives' power, and I seized the moment to recommend new candidates. To father, one day while dining with him, I casually brought up Consort Li's elder brother. "Father, does Lady Consort Li's brother fix houses really well? I heard Lady Li say he can make leaky houses not leak anymore." With the simplest words, I highlighted the talent of Consort Li's brother, Lin Wenshuan. Lin Wenshuan was a capable, honest official, but he had been suppressed for years because of Consort Li's disgrace. Never given a chance to shine, the emperor listened thoughtfully. After purging the corrupt officials from the empress's faction, countless positions opened up in Jianghuai. The emperor waved his brush and promoted Lin Wenshuan to governor of Jianghuai, putting him in charge of dam repairs and relief. Lin Wenshuan took the dangerous post and lived up to the trust. He not only rebuilt the dam to be unbreakable but also cleaned up the government, comforted the people, and governed Jianghuai perfectly. The emperor was overjoyed. Lin Wenshuan rose rapidly, becoming a powerful new favorite in court. Consort Li's faction grew stronger quickly, gaining enough strength to stand against the empress's remaining clan. One stone, many birds. With one prophecy, I had struck my enemies, secured my position, and empowered my ally. The balance of power in the harem was quietly reversing. The empress, under house arrest in the palace of earthly tranquility, naturally felt the bitter chill. Her lover, Grand Tutor Lu Qian, was even more restless. They knew, if this continued, they would be boiled like frogs in warm water. Dead end. They had to counterattack soon. Consort Li's spies brought news. Grand Tutor Lu Qian had persuaded the empress she must conceive a prince as soon as possible to secure her position and turn the tables. When I heard this, I was swinging in the garden. I looked at the clear blue sky, a cold smile on my lips. Conceive a child, a woman already rejected by the emperor, not even allowed to sleep with him. How could she get pregnant? I knew they were going to put on another show, and I had already prepared an unexpected congratulatory gift for them. 8. As expected, only a month later, earth-shaking good news spread through the palace. Her Majesty the Empress was with child. Imperial physicians confirmed the pregnancy pulse repeatedly and announced it to the emperor. The emperor's reaction was surprising. He seemed genuinely pleased. He not only lifted the empress's confinement but also showered her with treasures, softening his attitude greatly. Overnight, the empress's palace was crowded again, bustling as before. Consorts flocked to congratulate her, faces full of envy and jealousy. Consort Li was deeply worried and came to me privately. "What are we going to do? If she actually gives birth to a prince, all our hard work will be wasted." But I was not alarmed at all. I looked at her anxious face, slowly picked a grape from the plate. "Why the rush? A woman who can't even see the emperor, how could she get pregnant?" Consort Li froze, then understood, horror flashing in her eyes. "You mean, fake pregnancy?" I smiled and did not answer. Of course it was fake. With the empress's knowledge of medicine and Grand Tutor Lu Qian's cunning, faking pregnancy symptoms to fool a few physicians was not difficult. They were betting that, for the sake of the royal heir and the dynasty's reputation, the emperor would play along and accept the child. Once the child was born, her throne would be unshakable. A brilliant trick of retreating to advance, cutting off the source. Too bad they met me. If they wanted to act, I would play along and add a little extra. I began playing a filial daughter. I told father I prayed day and night for the empress and her unborn sibling, wishing them safety. The emperor was deeply moved by how sensible I was. I took the chance to offer to make peace talismans with my own hands, to send to the empress's chamber and hang by her bed, to show my filial piety. Naturally, the emperor could not refuse. I shut myself in the palace of eternal joy, solemnly getting yellow paper and cinnabar. Of course, the real trick was not in those. Inside the lining of each peace talisman sachet, I mixed a colorless, odorless plant powder. The powder itself was non-toxic, it even calmed the mind and helped sleep. But it had one special trait. Once it reacted with a certain herb in the medicine the Empress was taking long-term to maintain her fake pregnancy, it would slowly erase all her fake symptoms: nausea, drowsiness, the slippery pregnancy pulse, completely untraceable. The peace talismans were soon finished. I carried several delicate lotuses embroidered sachets and handed them to Father personally. "Father, these are Nyanan's peace talismans for Mother. Please let me take them to her palace, to bless Mother and the baby safely." I lifted my small face, eyes clear and full of childlike devotion. The Emperor was deeply touched by my filial piety. He took me personally to deliver the talismans to the Empress's palace. When the Empress saw us, she was shocked and delighted. Her face glowing with the happiness of a soon-to-be mother acting perfectly. She took the talismans, loved them, and ordered them hung by her bed at once. Naturally, she would never suspect a gift made by a child, especially not one presented in the Emperor's presence. She never imagined those tiny sachets would be the poisonous needle that popped all her hopes. I watched the sachets swaying gently by the bed, my heart calm. Everything was ready. Now I only needed to wait quietly, wait for the show to truly begin, wait for the giant bubble built on lies to be pricked by my own hand. 9. The waiting was not hard. Every day I accompanied Father in reading and playing chess, occasionally visiting Consort Li to hear news from court and harem. The Empress's palace remained calm, the Empress rested peacefully, and the Emperor visited often. The couple seemed reconciled. The whole harem believed the Empress would turn her fate around with this child. Only I knew the sword hanging over her head had started its countdown. About 10 days later, Consort Li's spies reported the Empress had recently seemed unstable in her pregnancy. Her morning sickness eased, and she looked much more energetic. She did not care, thinking the fetus had entered a stable phase. But the imperial physician checking her pulse noticed something wrong. A few more days passed. During another checkup, the physician's face changed completely. He knelt before the Empress, trembling, and reported her pulse was growing calm. The signs of pregnancy had vanished. The Empress panicked, smashed her teacup on the spot, insisting the physician was talking nonsense. Refusing to believe, she summoned several more physicians for a group consultation. All reached the same conclusion: Her Majesty the Empress was not pregnant at all, or rather, the pregnancy pulse was completely gone. A farce of miscarriage began. News soon reached the Palace of Heavenly Purity. The Emperor flew into a rage and rushed to the Empress's palace. At once when he arrived, the Empress lay on the bed, crying hysterically, insisting someone had murdered her prince. But what the Emperor saw was a woman with rosy cheeks and steady breathing, the sheets spotless. No sign of miscarriage whatsoever. The whole palace reeked of a clumsy, guilty cover-up. The Emperor's face darkened to the point of dripping water. He ignored her wailing and coldly ordered all attending physicians to examine her again before him. Beneath the sun of Heaven's Majesty, no one dared lie. Finally, the chief physician knelt trembling and spoke the earth-shaking conclusion: Your Majesty, Her Majesty's pulse is calm, her body healthy. She shows no signs of pregnancy or miscarriage. As for the earlier pregnancy pulse, it was likely a misdiagnosis, or man-made. 4 words, like a heavy hammer, smashed into the Emperor's face. The crime of deceiving the Emperor, the greatest humiliation a monarch could never tolerate. He had been fooled by a woman. With the absurd farce of a fake pregnancy for so long. Vile woman, the Emperor roared, kicking over a nearby table. The Empress was completely terrified. She rolled off the bed, knelt on the floor, unable to defend herself. No, Your Majesty, this concubine was framed. Someone killed my child. She was still acting at that moment. Wang Dequan led me in, and I appeared at the hall door at just the right time. I rubbed my sleepy eyes, looking blankly at the chaos inside. Father, Mother, I tilted my head and innocently asked the line I had prepared long ago. Mother doesn't have a baby anymore. Then my prayers didn't work. One sentence, like lightning, cut through the Emperor's furious mind. Prayers, peace talismans. He spun around sharply, staring deadly at the sachets hanging above the Empress's bed. He ordered an immediate investigation. But the plant powder inside the sachets had already evaporated completely into the air. The cinnabar and paper inside were all ordinary, nothing could be found. Finding no evidence, sometimes that was the most terrifying evidence of all. It meant the enemy's methods were so brilliant even he could not trace them. He did not know who did it, but he knew, the Empress had deceived him. That was an irrefutable fact. That was enough that night. The Emperor's edict spread through the 6 palaces. The Empress was immoral, deceived the ruler with a fake pregnancy. Her crimes were unforgivable, but considering her years of service, His Majesty spared her from death. She was stripped of her power over the 6 palaces, her phoenix seal revoked, and placed under lifelong house arrest in the Palace of Earthly Tranquility, never to leave until her death. This once glorious woman had been reduced to a living corpse. I stood by the window of the Palace of Eternal Joy, watching the lights go out in her direction. My heart was calm, without a ripple. I had not spilled a single drop of blood, yet in the most cruel way, I had dragged her from the clouds down into the dirt. Next came her dear lover, Grand Tutor Lu Qian. Deposing the Empress was like cutting off one of Lu Qian's arms. He became a frightened bird, trembling at every court session. Terrified the Emperor's wrath would fall on him next. He knew better than anyone. His affair with the Empress was a sword hanging over his head. Once it fell, he would be doomed beyond redemption. A cornered dog will jump over a wall. A man driven to the end will risk everything. Consort Li's spies soon brought the most terrifying news. Grand Tutor Lu Qian was secretly contacting the remnants of the Empress's purged clan. Along with nobles resentful of the Emperor, planning a palace coup. The news jolted my heart. I never thought Lu Qian would dare so much, but on second thought, it was his only way to live. I had to tell the Emperor, but I could not just report it directly. The Emperor was deeply suspicious. How could a 1-year-old child know of such a treasonous secret? Speaking plainly would only make him suspect someone was behind me, even that I was not human, not a demon, and burn me with the fire. I needed a cleverer, more innocent way. I thought for a long time, and finally found a foolproof plan, a signal only the Emperor and I could understand. That afternoon, I accompanied Father in the imperial study as usual. After finishing state affairs, he was in a rare good mood and set up a chessboard to teach me how to play. This was the chance I had been waiting for. Black and white pieces crisscrossed the board. Father held black, I held white. I knew nothing of real chess, only placing pieces randomly as I played. I spoke in my childish voice, telling a new story I had made up. Father, the little white rabbit wants to go home, but there are many big grey wolves on the road. One here, and here. My small hand tapped all over the board. Every white piece I laid seemed messy and senseless, but if you connected them, their positions formed a formation, a famous coup formation from a previous dynasty, one that won with fewer men against more. The Emperor was a master of war. He knew every famous battle and formation in history. At first, he just smiled and watched me mess around, but as I placed more pieces, his smile slowly froze. His gaze locked onto the board. In his deep eyes, stormy waves churned. He understood. He shot up his head, eyes sharp as blades, piercing straight into me. Nyanan, who taught you this formation? His voice held immense shock and wariness. I flinched as if scared by his stern face, then answered softly, but perfectly clearly, Master, Grand Tutor taught me. When Nyanan went to see Mother, I saw Grand Tutor drawing this picture with her. Grand Tutor said this formation is the strongest. It can beat lots and lots of bad people. One sentence, like lightning, tied all clues together. Empress, Grand Tutor, the strongest formation, one that could beat lots of bad people in this palace. Who could be the biggest bad people but him? The Emperor's face turned pale in an instant, then flushed with violent rage, but he did not erupt. He only looked at me, long and deeply, with eyes too complicated to read. Then he quietly put away the board. Nyanan is tired. Let the wet nurse take you back to rest. I nodded obediently and was carried out. I knew, the blade I had handed him, he had caught. A storm sweeping the entire imperial city was coming. That same night, the 9 gates of the capital were locked down. Countless imperial guards and city troops moved silently under cover of night, laying a net inside and outside the palace. The Emperor turned their plan against them. He deliberately left weak points in the palace defenses to lure the snakes out. The coup erupted 3 nights later. Lu Qian and his rebel allies thought they were unseen, attacking through the weakly guarded North Gate. But waiting for them was not empty defense, it was tens of thousands of the emperor's elite imperial guards, fully prepared. The sound of killing lasted less than an hour before dying down completely. The rebels were surrounded and wiped out. The moment they moved, by dawn, when the first sunlight fell on the Forbidden City, everything was settled. Grand Tutor Lu Qian was captured alive. All conspirators were caught, not one missing. I stood by the window of the Palace of Eternal Joy, listening to the distant noise fade, and breathed a long sigh of relief. With one game of chess, I had strangled a coup that could have overturned the dynasty, and with my own hands, I had sent my two enemies, from both past and present lives, to their doom. 11. The interrogations after the coup were bloody and swift. The emperor personally presided over the Ministry of Justice prison. He wanted to watch these traitors meet their end with his own eyes. Grand Tutor Lu Qian, once elegant, full of scholarship, could not endure even basic torture. Faced with mountains of evidence and inhuman pain, his mind broke completely. He confessed not only all treason but, to redeem himself, spilled everything about his affair with the empress, how they met, how they committed adultery in secret, how they joined hands to eliminate rivals in the harem and suppress consorts, even the vicious plot from years ago, bribing artisans to fill consort Li's baby's longevity lock with lead, poisoning the prince to death. When the confession was presented to the emperor, it was said his whole body shook, not from anger, but from disgust. He could not believe he had been cuckolded by this pair for years. He could not tolerate that his own child had been murdered by them. Anger was too weak a word for what he felt. He took the blood-stained, filthy confession and stormed straight into the palace of earthly tranquility. It was the first time he had stepped inside since her confinement. He said not a word. He only slammed the confession onto her face. When the empress finished reading, she collapsed, her face ashen, eyes empty, as if all life had been sucked out of her in an instant. All pretense, all excuses, turned pale and useless before the written proof. She was finished, completely finished. What followed was only natural. Grand Tutor Lu Qian and his co-conspirators were sentenced for treason, their entire families executed. The empress's clan, already broken by the corruption case, was uprooted entirely by the coup, and vanished from Great Qi's political stage forever. I watched it all with cold eyes, watching those once arrogant people dragged to the execution ground like dogs, watching all their former glory turn to broken walls and ashes. The hatred and pain of my past life found an outlet at last. My great revenge was fulfilled, yet I felt not the wild joy I had imagined, only an empty, quiet relief. After everything settled, the emperor summoned me alone in the imperial study. He sat me on his lap and fell silent for a long time. "Nyanan," he finally said, his voice tired. "What reward do you want?" he asked sincerely. I knew he understood. Without my chess game, the consequences would have been unthinkable. I could have asked for endless wealth, for unmatched glory, but I did not. I lifted my head, looked into his bloodshot eyes, and answered in the most sincere, wisest tone, "Daughter wants nothing. I only wish father a long, long life. If I can stay by your side every day, I will be content." Those words struck exactly where he wanted. A daughter who did not crave power, only loved her father. That was the daughter he most desired. He held me tightly. In his eyes, which had weathered countless storms, true, warm paternal affection showed for the first time. "Good, good girl. I promise you, I will protect you always. Never again will you suffer even the tiniest wrong." That was his promise, and it was the strongest protective charm I had won for myself. With 2 lifetimes of blood, tears, and wisdom, from this moment on, I was no longer the 7th princess who had to scheme and survive in the cracks. I became his true, most cherished treasure. 12. The final judgment came quickly and decisively. The emperor issued an edict: depose the empress, grant her a length of white silk and a cup of poison, let her choose a dignified death. Grand Tutor Lu Qian, for his heinous crimes, was sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. All 3 generations of his family, male and female, young and old, were executed. Blood stained half the capital red. Before her execution, The deposed empress made one last request. She wanted to see me. The emperor granted it. I walked alone into the once glorious, now desolate palace of earthly tranquility. She wore plain white undergarments. All hair ornaments removed, her hair messy and loose, her once stunning face was only ashen despair. She sat on the floor, staring at me, eyes empty yet burning with unwilling madness. "Who are you?" Her voice was hoarse, like a broken gong. A 1-year-old child cannot understand these things. "You are not Zhao Nianan. Who are you really?" Until her death, she still could not understand where she had lost. I walked up to her, squatted down, and looked her in the eye. I stared into her bloodshot eyes, and a cruel smile curved my lips. I leaned close to her ear and whispered, like a devil, only loud enough for the two of us to hear, the name she would never have guessed. "I am Zhao Wn, the deposed crown princess you personally pushed into the fire, burned to death in the palace of Long Trust in the previous dynasty. I still remember how hot the fire was, burning my flesh and skin until it sizzled. I still remember you standing outside the hall, laughing so happily, I could feel." Her body stiffen, inch by inch, as I spoke. Her pupils dilated in extreme terror. She tried to scream, but only a hoarse, gasping sound came from her throat. She stared at me, wide-eyed, filled with endless regret and the deepest fear of seeing a ghost. Then her head tilted to the side, a thread of black blood flowing from her mouth. She had chosen the poison in her last moment. She was scared to death by the ghost of her past victim. I stood up, did not glance at her again, and turned to walk out of the palace of earthly tranquility. The sunlight outside was a little harsh. I held my hand up to block it, and breathed a long, long sigh. Everything was over. After the empress's death, Consort Li was conferred the title of Noble Imperial Consort for exposing the coup. She was given the Phoenix Seal and put in charge of the 6 palaces. Her brother Lin Wenshuan also became a key minister in court. We became the most stable allies, guarding this peace together. I became the emperor's most beloved princess. My words sometimes carried more weight than an imperial edict. No one dared provoke me again. I chose not to marry, whether they were princes from neighboring kingdoms or talented young men in the capital. The emperor let me choose freely, but I refused them all. After 2 lifetimes of betrayal and scheming, my heart was already still toward love. I chose to stay by father's side, as his most trusted advisor, using my wisdom to guard the realm I had won with 2 lives. Many years later, the emperor grew old, and I grew up. I often stood by the window of the Palace of Eternal Joy, watching new faces come and go in the court, watching familiar struggles and plots repeat themselves. But none of it concerned me anymore. In the quiet of night, I could finally sleep soundly. No more dreams of the all-consuming fire of my past life. No more dreams of that face, grinning hideously in the flames. A new life. It was truly good.